We are live for the Praxis Elementary Education Exam 5001. And I am live everywhere on Facebook and in Vimeo. If you signed up for this, let me know in the chat that you can hear me and see me okay. I'm just going to check my other places and make sure I am indeed live. And yes, I am. Good, good, good. So, yep. Looks like I'm here. All right, everybody. So my name is Kathleen Jasper, and I'm going to be your instructor today. We are focusing on the Elementary Education 5001 test. We had about 2,000 people signed up for this webinar, so this is a big one. Lots of teachers all around the country have to take this exam or something similar to it. If you're taking an exam in Florida or Texas or Massachusetts, and you're trying to be an elementary teacher, you will take an exam that's very similar to this. They all kind of do the same thing. All right, looks like everybody can hear me. Carrie, Randy, Crystal, Megan, thank you so much. Yep. And Pauline, welcome, welcome. If you are inside the webinar right now, that means you signed up on our website. You got the free study guide and you will get the replay email. Well, it'll have the replay, the study guide, and any resources I talk about in this webinar. So you can just sit back, watch the webinar. I'm going to project everything on the screen. So if you didn't have a chance to download the free study guide yet, don't worry. I'm going to project everything and you can do it later. Or if you have it in front of you, great. If you are on social media right now and you're just seeing me and you're like, oh, I need that test. I want to download the free study guide. There's a link in the description. And when you click that, it'll take you to a sign up. Click the sign up, fill it out, and then it'll take you to a thank you page where you can download the free study guide. And then once you've signed up, you will receive the follow-up email with the replay and all of that. And you can even do that later if you want. And if you don't feel like doing that, you can just watch the replay on Facebook and YouTube. But to get the free study guide, that's pretty extensive. I forget how many pages it is. How many pages? 24 pages. You got to sign up. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Megan, Latoya, Ava, Alita, Alyssa, Tiffany. Awesome, guys. Let me know how things are going with you and perhaps when you are taking this exam. So my name is Kathleen Jasper. I'm just going to give you a quick intro about me. And I have been helping teachers pass their certification exams for the last 10 years. I've had my company for the last 10 years. And the 5001 in elementary education was the stuff I really started off with. And I know this test very, very well. It hasn't changed much over the years. It's sort of stayed the same in most states. And I've been helping people with this. This is our newest edition here. This book is pretty huge. This is available on our website digitally or on Amazon, but I've been writing books for this, doing trainings on this. I know a lot about these exams. I started off as a substitute teacher like many of you. And I went through the process of becoming alternatively certified like many of you. I had a degree in English and I was a bartender forever. And then around 25, I was like, I should probably hang up my bartending hat and try something else. My mother was a principal. She had been a teacher forever. I did not want to be a teacher. Turns out I really love teaching, and this is what I do now. I became a permanent substitute at the same school, which was great. I started traveling to all different schools, and that's really hard. And then I got a permanent position. I'm sure many of you have done that as well. And then they had an opening the following year, as they pretty much every school does. And I went ahead and applied, got it. And then I finished up my certification as I was teaching, which I'm sure many of you are doing. You're teaching right now and you have to take the tests and all of that because you have an alternative certification. I then became a teacher in biology, high school, biology and English and reading. So I understand a lot about reading, teaching reading, and I also understand a lot about being a content area teacher. And then I became a curriculum master teacher downtown, which is where I got my knowledge of tests. So we had a major testing company come in and train us in how to build proper assessment questions, how to make them robust, how to build rationale for them. So I learned a lot about the testing industry there. And what I do today is really about what I did in the curriculum department. Working in curriculum is amazing. If you're someone who loves to like plan things and make things and you love academic plans and all that kind of stuff, the curriculum department is a fun place to work if you have an opportunity. And then I got my doctorate and I became an assistant principal at the high school that I taught at. And my husband taught special education. So we are a family of educators. My mother has been an educator for 32 years. My aunts, uncles, all that, educators. So just so you know, I am qualified to teach you this stuff. And I left public education in 2015, started my own company, and I've been doing that ever since. It's been 10 years. I cannot believe it. And this is one of my most popular products, which is the 5001, because so many teachers need it. So we're going to talk about it today. And I can see that a lot of you are in here. Someone's not taking it. Okay, Megan's not taking it until 2027, but trying to prepare. Sounds good, Megan. And you can take it whenever you want. They'll take your money and you can take the exam and see if you pass it. You pass it. If it's within 10 years, you can use it towards your certification. I do have a colleague in the chat. Her name is Yana. She just sent you guys a offer code to use if you are interested in our products. Some of you already have our products. If you do, I know a bunch of them. A bunch of you are saying, I have your products and I'm using them. So that's wonderful. Desiree, you're taking the 7,000 series. Okay. 7,000 is the same as this. So the 7001 is the same as the 5001, except where the 5002 is, the language arts and reading, that's been changed to teaching reading. So if you want that, you can come next week. I'm doing a teaching reading webinar that'll help you with that. It's a little more robust than the 5002. All right. Taking it in June. Good, Alyssa. Way to be proactive. All right. There's a Jocelyn in here. My daughter's name is Jocelyn. So I zoomed in. Welcome, Jocelyn. All right. I'll be taking mine on the 29th. Okay. Sounds good, Ty. Let's get started. So one of the things I want to show you about is this came with a free study guide. That works. A lot of people use all of my free videos and my free study guide and they pass. Some of you like a more robust study program. And so that's where I recommend this study guide. When you buy it on our website, you can get 20% off using the code that's in the chat. And if you are watching me on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn right now, just sign up through the link in the description and you can get the offer code. You'll get the offer code via email or whatever. It'll come through. Now, the free stuff is amazing. There are a bunch of YouTube videos. I'm going to show you where to get those at the end because I want to go through our things first. But I just want to show you, if you are interested, where you can get our products before we get started so that we can, while you're doing this, if you decide, you know what, I like this course, I want to buy it, then we can do that. And I want to just show you a couple things so you know what's going on here. Okay, when you go on our website and you buy the study guide, when you add to cart here, you are buying the digital study guide, okay? And I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute. That comes in a PDF emailed to you that you can save on your computer. And if you're someone who likes things digitally on your iPad or whatever, that's a great choice, okay? If you're someone who's like, no, I need to open the book, I need to touch the book, I need to write in the book, that's where you click this Amazon button here, and it will take you to our book. And you can see we have almost 1,000 ratings. Most of them are 5-star. This is the most popular book. Let me zoom in. That's tiny. Okay. You can see that this is super popular and people love it. And this is the latest edition. All right. We did have another edition. Most people buy the old edition because it's the tried and true, but I would recommend getting the new one. If you've purchased the old one, you're fine. You don't need to buy a bunch of new stuff. Okay. If you have the older book, which is, let's see, how do we find that right here? It's this one here. It looks a little bit different. You can see it's the first edition. Don't buy a bunch of new stuff. You are fine. The first edition gets people through, no problem. But if you haven't purchased anything yet, get the second edition. And the second edition is on our website. Now, if you are using the offer code, it won't work on Amazon for the physical book. We can't give offer codes on Amazon because Amazon's the publisher. So just know that. And one other thing on Amazon, just want you to be aware, if you buy a used book, you're only saving a couple of bucks and you're getting a book that's written in. And we get emails all the time that says, I bought your book on Amazon. There was writing in it. Well, you bought a used book. Okay. So I can't do anything about third-party sellers. So if you don't want writing in your book, please be sure to buy the new, and you're only paying $3 or $4 more. Amazon Prime comes to your door within a couple of days. Okay. So that's really helpful. The other thing we have, let me just show you really quickly. We have extra practice tests here. These are digital sent to you. If you're like, I want more practice tests, you can get them under practice tests here. There are all these different practice tests we have, and that offer code will work because you're buying it from the website. Now, listen, Doing practice tests over and over again is not the way. You have to understand the concepts in the book. But if you like more practice, I did build these practice tests. I did that. I almost didn't want to do it because I don't want people just to go, oh, practice test, practice test, practice test. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why that's not okay as we get into it. Okay. It helps. I'm just saying it's not the only way. Just doing practice tests over and over again is not the way. Then if you want more, like if you like my videos, you'll love this online course. You can buy the full course or each individual here. Now, somebody said they have the 7001. The 7001, we have that as well. It's very similar. It's just that the 5001, or I'm sorry, the 7002 is a little different here. We can talk about that later because we want to focus on the 5001. But this particular online course, you can buy all or some sections. If you need more than 2 sections, buy the whole thing. It's cheaper. And then that looks like this. I just want to show you what it looks like before we get started. It's huge. It comes with the free study guide in digital form. And then it's got just lots of videos and everything you need for each thing. It's got quizzes, and then it has explanations of quizzes. And it goes through that, like the math, if you're struggling with the math. Let's say you're not struggling with anything else, you're good with everything else, but math is like something you struggle with. I recommend the math online course because I go through everything, including the practice test. You can see here are the questions, and then I go through every single question on the practice test. So that will help you. Those are a little bit more robust, but they do come with the they do come with the study guide in digital form and all the videos. And we have an app now on your phone. It makes it really easy. All right. So that's it. I just wanted to show you where to get extra stuff. If you want it, you can just use our free stuff. And that works too. I know some of you are trying to save money. Totally fine. See how you do. Use the free stuff, go in and take the test. And then maybe you buy just whatever remaining tests you need. That's a way to do it as well. Now, I want to just go a couple of things, a couple of questions people ask me. Number one, should I take the entire thing at once? Because this is an exam that has 4 distinctive subtests. The exam is called 5001, but it's broken up 5002, 5003, 4, and 5. And again, I'm going to go through that in just a second. But people say, should I take the whole thing or should I break it up? I have test anxiety. Here's what I suggest. When you take it the first time, I believe that you should take the whole thing because you could pass all or some sections. Why make it harder on yourself? So just go in, low expectations. It's a huge exam. It's got a lot of questions. It's a long one. I would definitely just take the whole thing. Then let's say you pass science and social studies. Now all you have to focus on is the reading and language arts and the mathematics. Then if you want to take those one at a time, you can. So for example, let's say I take the whole thing at once. I studied pretty good with the free stuff. I did some search on Google and ChatGPT, and I got to know the social studies and science, and I passed it. I've always been good at those, right? So then all I have is the reading and language arts and math. Now I want to take it one at a time. I just want to focus on each one. So you sign up for the reading and language arts. All right. You take that, you pass it, then you sign up for the math. That's where I would break it up. But the first time I would take the whole thing at once because it's just easier. Desiree says, make sure you go to a test site. I tried to take it from home and got kicked off and I had to retest. Okay. Here's the thing, guys. There's been a lot of issues with taking the test at home. When it was COVID, a lot of people did it because they had to. I'm with Desiree on this. I would probably go to a testing center unless you have like amazing internet, amazing equipment, but the at-home testing tends to be glitchy. I have heard this from a ton of people. They get kicked off or it doesn't save. They have to retest. It's a whole thing. Go to the testing center. It's a ETS testing center. All they do is deploy tests all day. It's a little cold in there. Wear a sweatshirt. Don't wear any jewelry because you have to take it off and put it in a locker. Go in there bare, no jewelry, no nada. And go into the testing center if you can, if it's not too far away from your house. Some people live out in rural America and they can't get there, but I definitely recommend trying. I have to take the Foundations of Reading Praxis. Good. Well, the Foundations of Reading is a Pearson test. The Praxis is the teaching reading 5205. However, they are very similar exams. And Jennifer, I am doing a free webinar next weekend for that. So I would definitely show up for that. Go to my website under free webinars. You'll see it there. We'll also link those up in the email that goes out. So come see me next week. We're doing that. That's a big one. Lots of people have to take that test. Okay. With the GACE, is the 5001 combined test 1 and 2? Yes, it is. GACE is made by ETS. So the GACE is a Georgia test, but they have one extra section. They have the PE and fine arts in it. So this book will help you, but you need this extra section. Now I have that section in my pre-K to 3 or my early childhood book. So if you're taking the GACE and you want that extra section, show us proof of purchase that you purchased this book by emailing info@kathleenjasper.com. If you buy it from our website, we will see that you purchased it. But if you buy it from Amazon, just send us a screenshot of your purchase. Please make your name visible, and we'll send you the section of the 5025 that has that fine arts and PE. It's a small section. We'll send that to you if you want to use our products. We don't have a book for GACE specifically. Okay. I have to take the social studies portion again for the 4th time. All right. So we're going to get to social studies. We're going to do reading and math first. So, bear with Khadijah, but the social studies, I'll just say, let me say this too. The social studies in science is straight up memorization of crazy facts. And that's why it's important that you don't just do practice tests over and over again, because they could give you a question on any one of the many things that are in the test specifications. So the test specifications are also called the study companion. That's what ETS uses. And in it, there are specific topics. I'm not going to project it here because it's their intellectual property, and I don't want to be posting their intellectual property, but it is free. Just Google. I'll show you how to Google it. Praxis 500. You're saying social studies 5004 study companion. Hang on, I'll share my screen in a second. Let me just get to that. Okay, let me share screen real quick. I don't know why my screen is black. I guess I have it on nighttime effect, but you can see Praxis 5004 study companion. It'll probably pull up the 5001 study companion. Let's do that because it's all one. Oh, I'm back to the, you can see I pop up here. I'm a sponsored ad. Scroll down. I mean, feel free to click on my website, but scroll down until you see the PDF here. This is from the actual test maker. You're seeing my insights here because I'm on my own thing here, but a lot of times you'll see an ad pop up right here, multiple subjects. You're going to click this and it's going to pop up and I've already been in here. I'm constantly in this thing. Let me scroll up here. You can see that I already have this. I'm sorry, that's 5002. Let me scroll down a little bit just to show you guys. Here's the social studies. And when you scroll down, this is all fair game. This is all fair game. We will link up the study companion in the email that goes out so you can grab this for yourself. But all of this is fair game. And that's why just doing practice tests over and over again is not going to help you. You need to understand these things because it may be asked a variety of ways. And if, U.S. history and world history is not your jam, then you really need to work on these. They also have these guiding questions that I love. This will really help you. These are critical thinking questions, and they have specific things like the 10th Amendment, the Commerce Clause. Look those things up. If you see EG here, and then some sort of thing, that's probably on the test, or it's going to be an answer choice. Look at this, e.g., spatial terms, places, and regions. Look up all the stuff, e.g., how humans change the environment. In my practice books, in my test prep books, I take these topics here and make them their own heading, and I make sure I cover all of these things, all right? So that's the study companion, and that's why I say read the book. I need my pen. That's why I say read the book. If you just go straight to the practice test questions, you're not getting proper prep. You're just not, because it could ask you it in a different way. I have no idea what questions you're going to get on test day. The tests are secure. There's no way to know. It's better for you to understand the concepts. All right. And I have tons of videos on this. You may want to invest in the online course if you're having a hard time, or just look at those test specs if you don't want to spend any more money because you've taken the test so many times, you've given ETS all your money. You can download the specs and take each thing and Google it. Find videos that show you all about it and learn that concept. What do you recommend getting on the practice test before taking the actual test? Good question, Carly. I recommend that you're scoring a 75. That's the safe zone. Most states, you need a D or lower to pass this exam. That's another thing. If you have test anxiety, you don't need an A. You need a D or a low C to pass each section. So start studying and understand that you do not have to be perfect. Most standardized tests, unless you're trying to go to an Ivy League university, you don't need to get that very many correct to get the check. Okay. So you can't really predict your score because they use a scale score. I do have a prediction on my website. We'll send you that blog. It's it's a scale score calculator I have. I'll put it in the email. But you need to get like a 75. That's the safe place. Okay. There's no writing on this test. It's just straight up multiple choice. They call it selected response because some questions you have to choose all that apply. And when you have those questions, choose all that apply, you have to get the whole thing correct. Getting part of it correct is not enough. What's the difference between your two books on Amazon? Brittany, good question. One is the first edition. One is the second edition. If you already bought the first edition, it's fine, but I would recommend getting the second edition because there are more practice test questions. Let me show you really quick, just the difference. And I'm going to show you the, okay, here we go. This is the real study guide here. On the new study guide, notice that I have these practice questions after each section. So foundational skills in reading, practice questions, writing, practice questions, language practice questions. If we scroll down to math, same thing. Scroll down to social studies, United States history, practice questions. All these are just for United States history. Now that's on top of all the practice tests full length. So I've added about, I don't know, like 10 times 40, probably like 150 practice test questions at, 10 at the end of each section. So that's going to help. But if you already bought the first edition, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Now, this is the free study guide you're getting, and we're going to go through these questions now. But please, guys, I put in a nice, robust front section for the reading and language arts. Go through this, really understand this. These are important things that you need to understand to do well on the test. All right, and I'm going to go through those now. Okay, so let me just stop sharing really quickly and see if we have any more questions. This webinar will help with 7001. Yes, it will, but I recommend you take my teaching reading webinar next week because 7002 is much more difficult than the 5002, but everything else is the same. Okay. Yep. And Yana is answering your question there. All right. Yana is my colleague. Yana Crystal Bossi is my colleague. She'll answer your questions while I am doing the presentation. Let's get started on that now. Let me go ahead and share screen. Did you say the entire test is multiple choice? Yes, it is. The entire test is multiple choice. There is no essay or anything like that. You just have to choose. But I did say they call it selected response because it'll have more than one correct answer. Those choose all that apply. Those are considered selected response in the testing world. Multiple choices, one answer is correct. Selected response means that some of the questions might be choose all that apply. And remember, you have to get the whole thing correct to get any points. There are no partial points. Okay. Yeah, it looks like that link is dead. She fixed it. Looks like, she fixed it. So go ahead and click on the new link. How do I know Praxis tests I will have to take? Will this book help me for all Praxis tests? No, this is specific for elementary ed. If you Google Praxis by state, you can look up your state on the ETS website and it'll tell you exactly what tests to take. Okay. Are the 5001 and 5901 the same other than the reading? Yes, Neil, they're exactly the same. All they did was take off the reading and language arts and they make you take a separate test for that. So Neil, I would do this webinar today and I would do the teaching reading next week because if you're taking the 5901, your state most likely will also make you take a separate exam for the reading, which is annoying, but some states do that. So I'll see you next week, Neil, because we're going to go through that. Okay. Is there any webinar for study guides? Praxis Core. I'm doing Praxis Core in April. So check out the webinars page for that. Okay. Does this help with Praxis 2? This is a Praxis 2. Let me go over what Praxis 2 and Praxis 1 mean. Praxis 1 is the Praxis Core. That is a different exam than this. The Praxis 1 is like an SAT. They're testing your reading, your grammar and writing, and your math skills as basic skills. There are no teacher questions. The Praxis 2 is your subject area exam. This is a type of a Praxis 2. This is elementary education. But if you're trying to be a middle school math teacher, the middle school math test is your Praxis 2. If you're trying to be a social studies high school teacher, the Praxis 5581 is your Praxis 2. So Praxis 2 is like an overarching thing. You need to figure out what content area you're taking. This is the most popular Praxis 2 because there are so many elementary ed teachers, but it is not the only one. There are 82 Praxis 2s depending on your subject area. All right. People are asking, where do you find your state passing requirements? I will do that at the end. What I want to do is get started on this, but I will show you how to find your score, like what your bottom score has to be in order to pass. We'll do that after I'm done with my presentation on the stuff. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. Let's start with here we go. All right. So we are going to start. You know what? I had all these cool things I was going to do, but I'm not going to. I am going to put a poll up, you guys, because I want to know where you found me from. I'm going to open the poll. And if you wouldn't mind just doing this poll for me, let me know where you found this webinar. Was it Facebook? Was it TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram? And just let me know it just helps me to kind of understand. We are doing a lot on TikTok. I'm trying to build up that community there, but we certainly have a robust community in a lot of other places. So just if you have a minute, that would be great. If you could just take a look at that for me. All right. So we are doing elementary education. This is the whole test, but again, it's broken up into 4 parts. We have the 5002, which is reading and language arts, 5003, which is math, 5004, social studies, and 5005, science. Now, if you're taking the 5901, it's the same thing, except this is 5903, 5904, 5905, and they are identical if you look at the test specs, okay? Then we want to kind of have a look at what's going on in terms of the actual content areas. So the subtests. This is one giant test, but we have huge subtests. Look at the 502. This is the biggest part. It's 90 questions. So that's going to be arguably the biggest and the hardest. People believe that the 5002 and the 5003, the math is not easy on this test. Oh, you can see my dog. See my dog? She likes to lay in here with me. If she starts to bark, I'll kick her out. But she's just, to be a dog and just lay there and not have to worry about any tests. There are 65 questions on the math. So that one's a pretty large portion of the test. Then you have 5004 and 5005, social studies and science. And they're almost identical in terms of questions. But the 5005, the science, you get only 55 minutes. Okay. Now, that being said, let's talk about the 5002. It's broken up into 2 main content categories, reading and then writing, speaking, and listening. The reading is going to be broken up by the Fab 5 of reading. And that's basically all your foundational skills plus comprehension. So this part of the reading is going to focus on phonemic and phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocab, comprehension. Those are the Fab 5 of reading. Then you'll also be asked about writing, speaking, and listening. But I know this looks like it's bigger because it's 53%, but that 53% is broken up by 3 subjects. Okay? This reading is like its own thing, the foundational skills. So really the bulk of it is the foundational skills. Now let's have a look at what are foundational skills. This is very important. I have a whole playlist on YouTube about foundational skills. I do videos all the time on this. This is one that lots of people need help on. So we're talking phonological and phonemic awareness. These are sounds only in words. Now, why does that matter? Research shows that we must teach phonological and phonemic awareness explicitly and systematically. Write this down if you're taking notes. The terms explicit and systematic are good words on the exam. What are good words? Good words are the words you see in the test specifications when you're looking over all of this. So that document I showed you for the 5001 with all the different content categories and all the different things, the words in there explaining all this stuff are good words. And everywhere you go when it comes to reading foundational skills, the term explicit and systematic are used. Well, what is explicit? Explicit means that we focus on these skills explicitly. We don't just teach words and hope they understand the sounds by listening to the words, which a lot of times, like the way I grew up, that's how it was taught. We learned kind of whole language. We were sort of taught words before we were taught any sounds. Some of you may be different, but research switches. It's like a pendulum. It goes this way and that way. But we know by the research that by focusing on phonological and phonemic awareness, if I ask you how many sounds in the word bat and you go b, at, you're focusing just on the sounds. I'm not talking about letters. I'm not talking about spelling. I'm just listening to sounds. That sets the foundation for phonics later, where you actually have to see the letters and understand the sounds, letter sounds correspondence. But first we start here. Systematic means we start here, then we move to here, then we go to here, and we progressively go to the more complex skills. That's systematic. And you might also see recursive. What does recursive mean? Well, sometimes we have to go back to go forward, right? Sometimes we have to fix up some phonics skills. For example, make. We know the A is long because we have this silent E after this consonant. That's a code inside a word. That's decoding the word. I have to see the word in order to do that. Okay? So really, really important that we understand the difference between phonemic and phonological awareness and phonics. You will need to know the difference and you'll need to understand the progression. It's not easy. And those of you taking foundations of reading, maybe you're taking the 7001, so that 7002, and someone else who is taking the 5901, you will have to take the teaching reading. They go even harder on these. And it's hard. If you've never taught reading, this is crazy foreign stuff. But it's really important we understand it, especially as elementary teachers, because first things first, as an elementary teacher, you are a reading teacher, period. Like, that's the most important skill. Math too. I'm not dissing my math teachers, but they have to get the reading skills down. This is like the biggest part of your job. And then we have fluency, which is reading strings of words, sentences, passages. Then we get into comprehension. This is at the top. This is where your analytical thinking comes in. You're predicting, summarizing, and we're teaching students metacognition, how to think about their thinking. So you might model, that's a difficult word. How do I figure that word out as you're teaching students? Let me read around that word. Those sort of conversations you're having out loud with students, that is thinking about thinking. Someone's asking, will the 5001 help the 5025? What I'm talking about right now, yes, this will help, but you have a separate test. And I'm doing the 5025 in 2 weeks. So sign up for that under the free webinars. Will this help as FTCE? FTCE has a very similar exam as this. So if you're here, this is good. It's free. You will see a lot of the same concepts on all elementary education exams. All right, so let's have a look at what a question might look like for the foundational skills. Now, this is from page 8 on your free study guide. Don't scramble to try to find it. If you haven't downloaded it yet, no worries. I'm projecting everything. You can look at it later. All right, so I always want you to work backwards. Those of you who are in the chat, tell me if you've been practicing working backwards because you've seen my videos before, and let me know if it helps you. I'm telling you, it's a game changer. Think like a test maker, not a test taker. You can learn a lot about an item, and when I say an item, that means the whole thing. That means the stimuli or the stimulus and the answer choices. That's called an item in the testing world. And by working backwards, you reduce the amount of time. You start here, you read it, then you go down here, look at the answer choice. Oh, and then you got to go back in here. Start working backwards. Think like a test maker, not a test taker. Okay. And what does that mean? All right, let's have a look here. Phonemic awareness, decoding, phonics, structural analysis. Well, if I have studied my book and I've really dug into phonics, I know decoding and phonics are the same thing. And since I can only have one correct answer choice, I can get rid of B and C right away. Now I'm down to 50-50. And I know structural analysis is sort of a phonics skill as well. Decoding is the same thing as phonics because you're looking, that's letter sound correspondence. You're looking at a word and looking at the codes and deciphering. For example, make, I'll use that word again. This is a code. This is a long A. This is a silent E. This is a consonant. Those are codes. PH in phonics. This is a code, the P and the H together, right? So we want to make sure we understand that. B and C are out. I've already gotten down to 50-50 here. Now I'm talking this out with you. I'm taking a little extra time. You would do that quickly. Boom, boom. All right, now let's read these bullets here. Teach students to break down words by individual sounds. Teach students to focus on sounds, sounds, sounds. What do we have for sounds? Phonemic awareness. Decoding, phonics, and structural analysis has to do with the actual word itself. To do a structural analysis like something like unwell, right? I might break off the prefix, focus on the root word. Well, I have to see the word. I have to look at the word. Sounds only, phonemic awareness. I don't have to see the word. When I was teaching reading, the reading coach told me you can do phonemic awareness in the dark. You don't have to see anything. We're just saying, all right, what's the first sound in the word pat? And the kids go, pa. What's the rhyme? And I mean in terms of onset and rhyme in the word pat? And they go, at. That's not phonemic awareness. That's phonological awareness. But notice, they don't have to see the word. I'm just asking them to talk about sounds. So A is correct. Now let's have a look at reading, literature, and informational text. Here's one thing you need to think about. This is the second part of it. You want to have a balanced literacy approach. That means you're using literature and informational texts. That means you are allowing students to be as immersed in informational text as literary and vice versa. They need to read poems and stories, but they also need to read newspaper articles and graphic novels and other things like that. We want a print-rich environment. Those are all good words. We'll focus on text structure. Is it expository? Is it argumentative? Is it descriptive? Is it narrative? Text features, headings, bolded words, charts, and graphs. Comparing multiple texts. This is the high level stuff. Maybe comparing a poem about the environment to a newspaper article about climate change. Teaching students how to, move from the literary, the more artsy, to the more concrete, more, newspaper article type stuff. That's really important. Text to self. How to show students to identify with text. What does this text tell me about myself? What does this text tell me about other cultures? That's why it's really important to have books that represent everybody, because it teaches students about the world. And then, of course, evidence-based discussion. This is a good word on the exam. Evidence-based discussion means that you are requiring students to point in the text where they got the answer. So they might make a claim like, oh, she was scared or something, right? I'm just making something up now, but she was scared. And I might say, where in the text did you come up with that? That's a very good observation. And the student might say, on page 2, she says this, and that means she's scared. That's the beginning of teaching students how to cite evidence as they get older, because we need them to start showing where they found that. We need to show students where to find reliable and valid information. This is a skill we need to help them with, because there's a lot of misinformation everywhere. This is how we sort of combat that. And we also set them up for those research projects they're going to have to do where they find, a source and then cite it. This is the start of it, asking them to point in the book. Where'd you find that? All right, let's have a look at what this question is. All right, so let's have a look at the answer choices here. This is number 7 on page 9, if you're following along. If not, just watch me here. When you have long answer choices like this is a great time to be working backwards. A, allow students to partner up and read the text with a buddy. All right, many of you like partner reading. It's cooperative learning. I'll leave it. I don't hate it. I'm not going to cross it off, put a little dot by it. B, reward the students with extra time in the computer lab for finishing their reading. This is always going to be incorrect in the reading section. Do external rewards work? Yes. Do cookies and candy and homework passes, do they work? Absolutely, they work. The problem is they stop working after certain moments in time. They will work temporarily, but we want to focus on the intrinsic rewards here instead of extrinsic. All right. And so B is out. C, require strong language, the students to finish reading for homework. Bad word. Do we use homework in real life? Yes. On this exam, homework is a bad word. D, allow students to self-select books from standards aligned group of informational text. Right away, D is my favorite answer because it has all the good words. Self-select books. That means you're allowing students to pick what they want to read. Remember, students don't want to read boring stuff. Let them choose what they want to read. And standards aligned means that it's to the state standards. This is always going to be the answer choice. If you see standards in an answer choice, it's the answer because the state wants to know that you're following the state standards. All right, let's read the question just to make sure. A teacher notices a few students are not motivated to read. What can the teacher do to motivate? Motivation has to do with autonomy, intrinsic value, and when you let students pick what they want to read from a set of books that are on level, developmentally appropriate type of deal. But I'll tell you, when I was teaching high school students in reading class, because there were a lot of kids who couldn't pass the reading exam. They were bright, they were analytical thinkers, but many of you know this, the reading exams are kind of, I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble, but they're so ridiculous. When in life do you have to read a passage and answer 10 questions on it? When has your boss ever gone to you and say, hey, Ms. Jones, I want you to read this article and I want you to answer these 10 questions in 10 minutes. And if you don't, you're fired. If you don't get an 70% on it, you're fired. Never works that way. Yet that's what we do. And there's so many better ways. So you've got kids who are in advanced classes who are literally like my daughter has straight A's and she has a hard time with the reading test because she likes to slow down. She likes to read. I'm a test prep expert. I'm like, you got to speed up. But why should she speed up? She's trying to analyze the text. But that's what they have. So when you're teaching students to read, you want to let them self-select. So when I was teaching high school, back to the point of my story, we would read about cartels. We would read about, at the time, there was like a whole uprising in Libya and Gaddafi. We were reading about all this crazy stuff. Would not have been appropriate for a third grader, but my high school kids couldn't get enough of it. And so that got them to read. Standards aligned. I broke a few rules when it came to stuff they were reading because I wanted them to read. I wasn't giving them like inappropriate stuff. I don't know if like the uprising in Libya was on the standards aligned informational text and I live in Florida. So, those were probably banned, but I didn't care. So I let the students self-select what they wanted to read because I wanted them to read. All right, let's go ahead and talk about writing, speaking, and listening. We're going to be working on the writing process, audience awareness, grammar mechanics, and presentation skills. This one here, probably one or two questions, but in the book, I have a grammar section. You may not have thought about your grammar in a while. I also have a grammar playlist on my YouTube channel. You might want to brush up on just a few things, commas, conjunctions, fanboys, stuff like that. All right, let's have a look at what you might see for this one. Now, when it comes to writing, let me move this up a bit so you can see that last answer choice. When it comes to writing, you're going to be giving a lot of feedback, right? So, you want to make sure that you are giving proper feedback, and feedback on this test and all elementary ed tests, all reading and writing tests are specific and meaningful, meaning you tell them what they did correct and what they didn't do correct. This right here, good job, keep up the great work, is nice, but it is totally useless. Think about it. Some of you are still in college. When you spend, God knows, 5 hours on a paper and your professor puts 100 on it, and says, good job. You're happy for the 100, right? But wouldn't you have preferred the professor maybe read it and then tell you like, hey, I liked this because you did that. So you could do that again. Or I really like this. Consider doing this. Whenever I was also a college professor, whenever I gave my feedback, the margins would be full of feedback, good and critical, because I want you to get better. Good job. Keep up the great work is not specific and not meaningful. So you can see here, we are going to eliminate B right away. Okay. Consider using a closing statement at the end. C is sort of specific, but it's negative. We want to do a little positive, a little negative. Let's look at D. Your writing does a great job describing your knowledge about the American alligator. Consider deleting sentence 4 so it doesn't take. Okay, I like D. That's got everything. Let's look at A real quick. I skipped A. You use the term American alligator a lot. Try combining sentences to give the paragraph varied language. Okay. Varied language is a good word on this test, but it's attached to a bad practice here. You've only given the negative feedback. We got to praise more than we kick. That's what my mentor used to tell me. You got to kick, but you want to praise more than you kick. Otherwise, they'll be unmotivated. If you have a student paper and you have marked the whole thing in red ink, the kid gets the paper back and they're like, oh my God, like, where do I even start, right? But if you have a kid who is having a hard time with all of it, choose one thing that the student could work on and just grade that part and let all the other stuff go. Okay. So A is out because it's just the negative. D's got the positive and the negative, and I didn't even have to read this. That happens a lot on this test. Okay. So read the answer choices first, especially when you have these long things here. What most people do, they start up here, they read this whole thing, then they read the answer choices, then they go back and read this, and it's a whole waste of time. All right. So don't do that. All right, let's move on to the math. Somebody in here needed to do some math, so we're going to do that. Just looking at the questions here. Current student teaching, trying to pass my Praxis 501 exam. Good, Charity. So you must be in the College of Education. Good. Yep. This is the right place to be. Okay, let me tell you something. Let me move this down a little bit. The math is not easy on the 5003. It's hard. There's slope intercept. There's the coordinate plane. There's 3D geometry. It's a lot. So I would really take the time to work through the math if math is not your strong suit. Also, I don't want you to tell yourself stories like, I'm not a math person. Or I'm an English person. I've never done well at math. Those are lies you're telling yourself. You just haven't been as successful in math. You can be successful in math too. Okay. So here's for the first section. All math standardized tests are broken up by numbers and operation, algebraic thinking, geometry, measurement, data, probability, and stats. For the more advanced tests for like high school, they're going to be broken up even more. Like, they'll have trig and all that. You will not have to do that. This is going to be basic, but when they say basic, it's not that basic. And when my daughter was coming home from elementary school, I couldn't believe the math they were doing. We did not do that in the 80s. We were not doing this math. They have to do a lot of crazy math. Charity says, math anxiety is real. Yes, it is. But here's a couple things about anxiety when it comes to the test. Number one, you can take it as many times as you want. Number two, you can practice and get better. You just have not had a good experience with math. I will tell you this. I'm building an SAT course. It's almost done. I've been immersed in the SAT math and I've gotten so much better. I mean, typically English and language arts is like my subject. That's what I got my degree in, English, right? But now that I work with kids in math, I have to stay ahead of them. You can get better at math. I was a biology teacher. I didn't know anything about biology when I got hired as a biology teacher. I just passed the test. And I got in there and studied the bio, and I became so knowledgeable about biology. You can learn new skills. You can carve new pathways in your brain, and we're going to start that now, okay? Sharon, can you give advice for probability and stats? That's my weakness. It's good to know your weakness. Let's go ahead and have a look at some of that. First, let's talk about numbers and operations. Numbers and operations will be embedded in different questions throughout the exam. So like, for example, here, proportions, some probability and stats, you'll need proportions. Sometimes geometry, triangles, similar triangles. you need proportions. So that's a thing there. Let's have a look at a question that you might see. Let's just see. Okay. All right. So number 3, this is on page 11 of your study guide. Number 3. I'm going to give you a second to have a look at it. All right. So first things first, whenever you're looking at a standardized math test, look at your answer choices first. I can't tell you how many times the answer choices are right there in front of me, and I'm supposed to find an equation or an expression, and I try to solve this first. And the answer choices are staring at me in the face. And then I have to go back and redo it because A, B, and C, and D are not solving. It's asking for the expression. So go to answer choices first and have a look. Okay, we have to put this in an expression. Let's see what's going on here. The cost of 4 notebooks is $5. So 4N equals $5. Okay. Which expression below represents the cost of 7 notebooks? Well, in order to figure out what's the cost of 7 notebooks, and think about this, if you're shopping, you do this all the time in your head. Okay. What do? You have to figure out the cost of 1 and then multiply it by 7, right? So if I want to figure out the cost of 1, I need to get N alone. What do? I divide by 4, divide by 4. So 1 notebook equals $5 over 4, right? This is what we need. If I were to take it all the way out, we would know that it's 1.25. It's $1.25 for each notebook. But I don't need that because, we don't need that. We just need the 5 over 4. So what do we do now? If I want to figure out how many 7 notebooks is, I take 7 and I multiply that by 5 over 4. 7 notebooks times this right here will give me the cost of 7 notebooks. And that's going to be D. So just setting it up. All right, let's have a look at this one. So this is classic proportion 2. I'm looking at my answer choices and I see I have whole numbers. There are no fractions, no decimals. That's going to help because if I start doing this question, let me get my calculator out. If I start doing this question and I get a decimal, I know I'm on the wrong track. So that's why looking at your answer choices when we talk about math is so important. All right, you do get a calculator on this exam. It's a simple on-screen calculator. You will not get a handheld. Some states like the FTCE, I know they give you a handheld calculator. They may still, I don't know, sometimes the rules change. On this test, the 5001, you will not get a calculator. Okay. It'll be on screen. Sorry, you will not get a handheld calculator. You will get an on-screen calculator. So what I recommend doing if you're having a hard time with the math, I would open up the calculator app on your desktop and practice with the mouse because it slows you down if you're not good at it. Train yourself with the calculator. All right, let's have a look here. So we have Ryan works at a sandwich shop and can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. At this rate, how many sandwiches can he make in a 4-hour shift? This is a classic proportion problem. I have the word rate. Well, this is a rate. 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes equals, I'm not sure how many sandwiches in a 4-hour shift. Well, this is minutes. So I need to take my 4 hours and turn it into minutes. So we take 4 times 60, right? Because there's 60 minutes in an hour. 4 times that, because it's a 4-hour shift, is going to be 240 minutes. Now, let me talk to you about how I set this up. Whenever you get a word problem where there are 3 out of the 4 things and you need to find that 4th thing, proportion is your best friend. Okay. And what you do is you set both fractions equal to one another. You cross multiply and solve. You could also figure out how many times 50 goes into 240, and you would multiply that by 35 as well, and that would be this top number. But I like to just do the proportion the proper way. People online are like, you don't have to do that. Well, a lot of people who take my courses struggle in math. And so I want to show you like why you do this to just for it to make sense. Okay. Now let's have a look at the word problem to understand. I have sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes, right? He made 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. How many sandwiches? I don't know. It's an X. Can he make in 240 minutes? So this is a proportion, but it's also an algebra problem because we have to solve for X. So now all you have to do is cross multiply and solve. And I have 50 x equals 240 times 35. You're going to get a big number, 8,400. Notice we have zeros here, and so it's divisible by 50. Divide by 50, divide by 50, and we get 168. He can make 168 sandwiches in a 4-hour shift. That's a pretty good sandwich maker. I would probably hire that kid to work at my sandwich shop. That's a lot of sandwiches. All right. So that's how you do it. Another thing you want to think about, matchy. Whatever you have on the top has to be on the top on the other side. Whatever you have on the bottom has to be on the bottom of the other side. So sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. You could also do minutes over sandwiches equals minutes over sandwiches. But you cannot do sandwiches over minutes equals minutes over sandwiches. Don't intermingle them. Matchy. Same thing at the top, same thing on the bottom. All right, that brings us to algebraic thinking next. So you're going to have expressions versus equations. Just remember, equations have an equal sign, or, well, inequalities are called inequalities, but they expressions have no equal sign. For example, these right here, A, B, C, and D, those are expressions. Okay. This is an equation because we have an equal sign. Linear relationships. So those are just linear equations where you're solving for X or Y. Formulas for unknown quantities. Proportions again, because notice here, this is a proportion, but it's also algebra. I solved for X. So it is algebraic thinking. And then verbal statements, taking a verbal statement from a word problem and turning it into an algebraic equation. All right, let's just do some algebra. Now you will see something just like this on the exam where it's just a straight up algebra problem. So it says, or this is an expression, evaluate the actually it is an equation because we have B equals 4. Evaluate the equation for B equals -4. So that means, I'm just going to rewrite this, squared minus 3B. Wherever I see a B, I'm going to put in a -4. But I'm going to be careful. When I see negatives in a question on a standardized math test, I know I'm going to think like a test maker. The test maker is trying to trick me. They want me to mess up my negatives here. They want me to mess up my PEMDAS. So let me show you how to do this. Keep it all or keep it all nice and organized. Negative, and now we're going to put the B. -4 squared minus 3 times -4. Notice wherever I put the -4, there was a B, but I kept all the same negatives. Now you might say, oh, perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and distribute this. That makes a 4 squared. And then we have plus 12. Okay, 4 squared plus 12, that's 16 plus 12. That means 28. Okay, D, right? No. Now we have to follow PEMDAS. Remember, they are going to anticipate your incorrect answers. So let's go back here. PEMDAS. So this isn't just algebraic thinking, it's also order of operations. PEMDAS. We have parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, whichever comes first, and then adding and subtracting, whichever comes first. All right. So we don't have anything in parentheses. We do have the -4. And you might say, well, that's doing the parentheses. No, it's not. That is multiplication. Distribution is multiplication, and they will do this to you because your first instinct is to get rid of those icky negative signs. No. Exponents first. If you had something inside the parentheses, something like -4 plus 3, something like that squared, then you would do the parentheses first, the operation inside the parentheses. Inside, not distribution. Distribution is multiplication because you're essentially multiplying this -4 by a -1. This is a -1 here. Okay. Let me just get rid of that because I want it to look like the way it would on your test day. All right. So let's do it. -4 times -4 because that's -4 squared. That's 16. Bring the negative down. Then we have -3. And because I don't have any exponents here, I can do this one now. -3 times -4 is +12. This gives us a -4. It's not D, it's B. Notice how different the answer is when I follow PEMDAS. Be careful. Make sure you're just checking those order of operations because I'm telling you, my first instinct is to distribute. I want to get rid of it. I don't like those negative there, but you got to do the right order of operations first. Whenever you see negatives like that, just slow down. Just know they're going to try to trip you up. All right, and then we have geometry, measurement, and data. And a few of you had questions about data on here. So I have that on the next one, probability or whatever. What is the perimeter of a square with an area of 49 square inches? Okay, so we have 49 square inches. So inches squared equals 49. There's a couple ways you can do this. You could square both things here to get how many inches on each side, right? And so you would get inches equals 7, right? Because the square root of 49 is 7. If it's a square, 7, 7, 7, 7. Be careful. It's not asking area. It's asking how many, what's the perimeter? Perimeter is adding up all the sides. That's 28. Be careful. If you get 7 by doing the square root, you might go, oh, 7 and grab A and move on because you're rushing. Slow down. Make sure your final answer is exactly what they're asking you. Sometimes we don't do the whole thing. Like you don't follow through. Make sure you follow through. All right. Or, if you're like, oh, I wouldn't know to find the square root. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and just kind of think about it here. We have a square, right? And it's saying the base times height is 49. Well, what times what if they're the same because it's a square? What times itself is 49? This is where your math facts really help. 7 times 7 equals 49. So that means the base equals 7, the height equals 7, the height equals 7, and the top equals 7. Add them all up or multiply by 4 and you get 28. Either way, it works. All right, this one is one that would be considered probability and stats and data. This is where you have like combinations and you have to figure out how many combinations. All right, so I can see in my answer choices, I have all whole numbers going from the smallest to the largest. All right, so we have Ellie's food truck currently serves 4 main dishes, and 3 side dishes. And each meal, the person gets 1 main and 1 side. Next week, she is adding 1 main dish and 2 sides to the menu. Here's the key. How many more combinations of meals will her customers be able to get with the new additions? Okay. So when you see combinations, you might go, oh God, okay, let's do main dish 1 with side dish 1, main dish 2, side dish 1. You might go through and try to do this out. Don't do that. Whenever you have a question like this, what's the current one? Because they can only get 1 main and 1 side, we do 4 times 3. On her menu right now, they have a possibility of 12 different combinations. But next week, she's adding a main, and she's adding 2 sides. So this 4 times 3 becomes 5 times 5, yes? So that becomes 25. So you're like, good, okay, 25, moving on. No. Look, how many more combinations of meals? It's not 25. Be careful, slow down, read that question stem to make sure you're doing the right thing. How many more? Well, we have 25 on the new menu. We had 12 on the old. We're subtracting it. What do we get? 13. 13 is the difference or how many more they will have. Be careful. Some of this stuff is like, you know what you're doing, but you're moving too fast. You have to move quickly, but make sure you just reread the question stem, work backwards. Remember, grab that question stem one more time to make sure whatever you're doing is the answer. Because a lot of people would grab that D and move on, and they know that that's why it's in the answer choices. All right, moving on to social studies. This is where you have to know your content. And it's not good to just do practice tests over and over again because there is no way to predict what you're going to get. The only way you're going to know what to do is to study the different contents and understand dates and times, not memorize specific dates, but understand that like the Revolutionary War came before the Civil War, right? Or, the French Revolution and the time period during that. Understanding Mesopotamia versus other ancient civilizations, sort of big chunks of time, and also like different events will help you narrow it down because you can eliminate based on like the time frame. All right. Sharon asked, will we get scratch paper for the test? You will. It's like it used to be paper, but I think now they use a dry erase sort of paper. So yes, you will get scratch paper and you get a calculator, but sometimes the calculator will slow you down. If it's simple math, just do the math. There are a lot of times with SAT, I don't even use the calculator as much as I probably should, because I feel like sometimes it slows me down, especially if it's on screen. All right. So in the 5004, this is social studies. The first part and the biggest part is going to be U.S. history, government, and citizenship. So U.S. history is going to be everything from when the Europeans came over to the Americas. You're going to have a little bit on indigenous people, who they were, where they were. Then after, Europeans came here, then we had the American Revolution, major events, Civil War, westward expansion, key documents, Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Federalist Papers, branches of governments, and then civics, citizens' responsibilities, government responsibilities. And that is the biggest portion of the exam. So let's have a look at what that might look like. So we have following the Louisiana Purchase. Oh, sorry. Let's work backwards. We have implementation of the Indian removal process, reconstitution of the southern states, exploration of the new territory, initiation of the first U.S. Census. Following the Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson ordered which of the following tasks to be implemented? All right, so implementation of the Indian removal process, that sounds sort of reasonable because the Louisiana Purchase means the Europeans or the new colonists acquired a lot more land. Well, guess what? There were people on that land and they needed to be removed, unfortunately. And so that happened. So I'm going to keep A. B, reconstitution of the southern states. This is more about the Civil War, and it should be reconstruction of the southern states. They'll do that. They'll put nonsense words in there. Reconstruction came later. We're talking Civil War. So because I know my timelines, B is out. C, exploration of the new territory. This is Lewis and Clark. Well, what would happen? Louisiana Purchase. What do we do immediately after? We go and explore what we got. We got the Louisiana Purchase. Let's go see. And then they sent out Lewis and Clark to go explore the new land. So C looks good. D, initiation of the first U.S. Census. That doesn't make sense. We're talking about land. So either we're going to be talking about genocide or exploration or both. They sort of go together. And in this case, we start with exploration. Then we see there are people there. And that's when the Trail of Tears and all of the other things that happened after that. All right, let's have a look at the next part. So the next part, the second part is geography, anthropology, and sociology. And again, it's not that easy. That's world history, sorry. Some of this stuff you haven't thought about since you were in grade school, right? So some of these geography concepts, like an isthmus and what's a peninsula, and just some things that you should know. Obviously, I'm not saying you shouldn't know them, but you may not have thought about them. You may have had a job in another field and you haven't thought about these things. Okay, but this is what's going to be included. It's going to be world geography and concepts. So things like mountain ranges, longitude, latitude, location, all of that. Physical and human systems like farming, raising crops, things like that, cultures, and then migration patterns, push-pull factors. Why do people migrate to certain places? What are some of even I've seen on some of the practice tests, what are some of the tools people used as they were building their communities and things like that? So it can get nuanced. Let's have a look. All right. So this is number 6 from page 17. And I could see in my answer choices, intensive farming, sustenance farming, pastoral farming, and extensive farming. The only thing that I really saw in the test specs are intensive and extensive farming. So this is probably going to be the difference in that. Let's read. Which of the following terms is used to describe agriculture where large parcels of land are cultivated using machinery rather than manual labor? This is called extensive farming. This is what a lot of farms in the U.S. have, right? Because we have to feed so many people. So it's a big parcel of land and they use tractors and machinery and things like that. There's still labor. There's still people picking those crops and harvesting those crops. But when we're talking about big, extensive farms, we're using large pieces of land and we're using machinery rather than relying just on manual labor. Now, intensive farming, just so you know for future, intensive farming is a small piece of land with mainly manual labor. This is sort of like your local organic farms. So I'm just going to put local, where you buy like your vegetables from the farm down the road. Extensive is like factory farms. Look, we need both. I mean, we have a lot of people to feed. It'd be very difficult for local farmers to feed everybody in the nation. I mean, I guess if we change the model, it could happen for sure. And I know people are very pro local farms, and I like it too. But in order to feed the amount of people, sometimes we got to do extensive farming. Excuse me. It's not as pretty and not as humane, of course, but think of intensive. It's like local, intensive, extensive, big pieces of land. Sustenance is when we farm for ourselves. Like I have I don't, but let's just say I have a farm and I do my own vegetables, and I have pigs, and maybe I slaughter my own pigs, which I could never do. You know, that's sustenance farming, and a lot of people do it. And then pastoral farming is livestock. Okay, let's have a look at one more. So this one, oh wait, actually, this one goes. Sorry, this one goes with economics. Let me go to economics first. World history and economics. We're going to have ancient civilizations. This one's kind of tough. You're going to be asked about Mesopotamia and the Greeks and stuff, you just might not have thought about in a while. We're going to have all the way up to the developments of the 20th century. So far, there's no 21st century in the specs. They stop at the 20th. We are a quarter of the way through the 21st century, so I would assume that they would add that later, but they will most likely do that when they redo the test, and that probably won't be for a while. Cross-cultural comparisons, so same thing in kind of the geography section. Basic econ, there is economics on this. So supply and demand, scarcity and choice, those basic econ concepts, and I have them in here. And then populations, resources, and impact. These are things like push-pull factors as well, population density, those types of things. Let's have a look at a world history, ancient civilization question, and then I'll go back to that econ question. So this is from page 18. This is number 8. Which of the following civilizations was the first to use irrigation? All right. Well, right away I can take off C. Pangea is when the whole world was connected by the continents and the earthquakes happened and separated the continents and all of that. So that's not it. Now I'm between Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Rome. Here's the thing you need to know. Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization. They were the first to use irrigation with nearby rivers. Egypt perfected it and made it better, but Mesopotamia was the first to use it. So be careful. They could be nuanced like this. And the term first here, ancient civilizations. Let's go to the econ question here. This is from page 18, number 9. And let's just look at the answer choices. When a country can produce more goods using the same or fewer resources, produces goods here, specialize in the product. Okay. I know this is going to be some sort of econ question. I can't figure out the answer choices. This is not one where you can eliminate bad words. I have to figure out what it's asking. And it's saying, which of the following is an example of absolute advantage? All right, A, when a country can produce more of a good using the same or fewer resources than another country. That is actually the one. And listen, guys, I redid number 9 to be more clear on what an absolute advantage is. So if you go ahead and download the study guide again, if you're watching this in the future, it's already fixed. I fixed it this morning just to be more clear on the absolute advantage. If you download the study guide again, then you'll see this fixed. So go ahead and download it again. You'll get it in the email as well. In the future, if you're watching this sometime past March 8th, you've already got the updated copy. All right. But if you downloaded this last night or 2 days ago, go ahead and download it again and you'll get the right one. It's just one question I kind of changed up a bit. B, when a country produces goods at lower opportunity costs than its competitors. Okay, let's talk about what an opportunity cost is. An opportunity cost is the cost that you're losing from an opportunity. For example, let's say you have $10. All right, this is a very basic example. And there's an ice cream truck coming down the road and you only have $10. And you've been saving up for a new book. And the book is $8 or something, or $8, okay? The ice cream truck pulls up And all of the ice creams are more than $2, right? So you could buy a chocolate like thing for $3. You could buy a popsicle for $4. Everything is over $2. Well, you won't be able to get an ice cream and buy your book because your book is $8. So if there was something here worth $2, you could buy that and still get your book, but there's nothing on the menu worth $2. So you have one or two choices. You can either buy an ice cream and forego your book, or you could skip the ice cream and buy the book. That's opportunity cost. That has nothing to do with absolute advantage. B is out. Let's look at A so I can tell you why this is absolute advantage. When a country can produce more of a good using the same or fewer resources than another country. Let's think about it. EVs, electric cars. Okay. China has an absolute advantage on building EVs. Why? Well, they have a lot of the technology in-house, and also they have a very cheap labor force. So they can produce EVs at a very low cost and therefore sell. And when I say EVs, I'm saying electric vehicles. They can sell electric vehicles at a very low cost. If we allowed these EVs into the United States, they would wipe out the EV market here. Because if you go online, you can check it out. They got really nice electric vehicles for like $10,000. You can't buy a $10,000 electric vehicle in the United States. Absolutely not. They have cheaper labor. They have some advantages. They have an absolute advantage here. That's why we have 100% tariffs on electric vehicles coming from China, which has been in place for a long time. This is pre our current administration. Because if you let any of those cars in, nobody's going to buy American because people want to buy, they want to save their money. So that's why China has an absolute advantage. Do we have 100% tariffs on everything that every country has an absolute advantage on? No, we don't. But in this case, we do for EVs because GM and other companies have a market here in the United States. And if we allowed these very cheap EVs to come in, it would wipe out GM, it would wipe out Ford and, Honda, BMW. And I know BMW is German, but we have plants here. So that's why. That's an absolute advantage. B is opportunity cost. C, when a country specializes in a product and is more efficient at producing and trades for products in other countries. No, that just means they specialize. D, when a country has economic surplus. No, it's that they can produce it at a cheaper, they can produce the same amount, but using fewer resources. That's an absolute advantage. Okay, Josephine, what's the difference between an absolute advantage and a monopoly? Good question. A monopoly means that there's only one company that does it. And I guess perhaps you could argue that a monopoly is an absolute advantage, but it won't be, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm sure the economists will come at me like, hey, that's not true. But with a monopoly, you do have an advantage, right? If you're the only company that does something, then, for example, FPL in Florida, there's only one electric company in Florida, really. There's another one, but nobody uses it, right? They are a monopoly, and they're allowed to be in a monopoly here in Florida. Google. There aren't a lot of other search engines. That's why Google is getting sued by the Justice Department because there's a monopoly. It's more technical than that, but I'm not in that industry. But who's using DuckDuckGo? I mean, maybe you are, but a lot of people aren't. So that is considered a monopoly. We're talking about producing. A lot of times it has to do with other countries. But I guess you could argue that a monopoly could have absolute advantage. The difference would be that they produce it with fewer resources. The fewer resources, Google still probably has to use a lot of resources, but they have so much power that they can acquire those resources more quickly than a smaller company could. Just know that a monopoly means that there's only one company providing a service or product, and therefore there is no competition. So they can raise the price as much as they want. Right? If there's only one electric company in your town, guess what? They can jack the rate to whatever, and it's you have to pay it. Another good example of things that are not a monopoly, if you go down to Costa Rica, they have really good internet, and you'd be surprised because you're like, Well, I'm in the middle of the jungle and my internet is like so solid right now, right? They have so many internet providers in Costa Rica. What do we have in the United States? Comcast, Xfinity. You go to New York and San Francisco, the internet's terrible in these major cities. There's only one provider. You go to the jungle of Costa Rica, literally, you have the best internet because every house has a different they have little satellites. It's been a few years since I've been down there. They probably have something different. But they have little satellites on their houses. Each one says a different thing. One is called Clado. Another one's called something else. There's competition. So those internet companies, they got to be on their game, putting new wires up, putting new stuff up, because I'll go to another company. That's the difference in a monopoly, right? So that would be the difference between that and absolute advantage. But you could draw some parallels between the two. All right. We did that. Okay, now we're on to science. Science is broken up into three main content categories: Earth space, life, and physical. Earth space is anything to do with moon, sun, stars, Earth systems, like earthquakes and hurricanes and stuff like that. Earth spheres, atmosphere, mesosphere, stratosphere, stuff like that. The crust, that means volcanoes, canyons, again, earthquakes, bedrock versus topsoil, just crazy stuff like that. And with Earth space or any of them, any of the content categories, we want to foster a sense of inquiry in students. If you get a question with the term inquiry in the answer choice, or giving the students time to like dig with their hands or get in the dirt or check something out under a microscope, that's the answer. All right, let's have a look. This is considered an earth science question. Water cycle. The picture is an example of, we have water cycle here, and I made this easy on you guys. It might not have the water cycle. It might just show you the clouds and all this stuff and infiltration and evaporation. This is the hydrosphere. Hydro means water, and you can see this is all about water here. If it's on the nose, it's the answer. You might say, that's too obvious. That can't be the answer. Yes, it's the answer. I promise you. If it's on the nose, it's the answer. They know you're not a PhD in Earth space. They just want you to understand the basics. Life science is going to be all things biology. This is my favorite. This is what I used to teach. So it's going to be everything from cells, even DNA, smallest parts of the cell, all the way out to ecosystems. So we have cell theory, parts of a cell, human systems, interdependence of organisms, life cycles, and again, inquiry. Good one here. Let's have a look. Which of the following is a producer? And again, this comes from the study guide. On the test, you'll just have this. And you might say, I don't know which one's a producer. All right, here's what you need to know. The grass is 100% producer because it's a plant. The plant produces all the energy, or plants produce all the energy. All right. So when the bunny eats the plants, the bunny gets some energy. But when the snake eats the bunny, the snake gets some energy as well. But some of that energy is lost because the bunny ate the grass, got the ATP and the cellular respiration, and hopped around a little bit, burnt off some of that energy. When the snake eats the bunny, he's getting mainly protein and fat. There is energy in protein and fat, but it's lost a little bit of it. Then when the bird eats the snake, same thing, gets a little bit, but not as much. And when the hawk eats the bird, they're losing part of the energy. As you go up the energy pyramid, the energy is reduced. Most of the energy is right here in the bottom, in the carbohydrates in the plants. So the grass is a 100% producer. Remember, on test day, you will not have, probably, I don't know, you won't have the energy pyramid with all these, with everything labeled to help you. But I have this in the book so you understand. All right. And finally, physical science. This is going to be your chem, your physics, small machines, lever, pulley, wedge, chemical changes versus physical, forces in motion, electricity, forms of energy, and of course, again, inquiry. Very important. Let's have a look. Lightning. Okay. How long has it been since you thought about lightning? I mean, maybe you're someone who thinks about it a lot, but this would be a really hard question. And it's an elementary ed question. And anybody who criticizes people who can't pass these exams, I invite them to answer questions like this because they probably can't either. So let's have a look. Which is an accurate description of how lightning works? When the ground becomes positively charged, the negatively charged electrons in the cloud move down the cloud toward the ground. And that's how lightning occurs. Okay, that's actually the answer. Let me just show you. I'm going to show you two things about this item. First, look at the way the item is structured. Notice we have when the ground becomes positively charged, when the ground becomes negatively charged. Do you see how it's the same exact answer choice, but it's just inverted in terms of positive versus negative? And then it says the negatively charged electrons and it says the positively charged electrons. See how that's different? C and D, the particles in the cloud become intermingled. The particles on the ground become intermingled. They'll do this a lot in testing. Just have a look at the answer choices and see that it's all the same thing. They're just putting positive versus negative, negative versus positive, and then ground versus cloud, cloud versus ground, right? Let me show you what happens with lightning. And this is going to be very simple. So my lightning savvy people out there, don't come for me. I'm keeping it as simple as possible. We have a cloud. We have the ground. Usually, before lightning or when there's no lightning or thunder or anything like that, inside the cloud, it's like boop, 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 boop. Everything's all intermingled. No big deal. Ground, boop, everything like whatever, right? Things are mixed up. The positively charged particles and negatively charged particles are just moving around. But when there is this occurrence of lightning, what happens is the negatively charged particles move to the bottom of the cloud and the positively charged particles move to the top of the cloud. And on the ground, all the positives move to the top and the negatives move to the bottom. Do you see how they all line up all nice like that? Opposites attract, remember, in magnets and electricity. When there's this attraction, lightning occurs. Look, it's more complicated than that, but this is an elementary test, so just know that. And again, if you knew that positives and negatives attract based on the book, do that. Like when you see something that's common, like, oh yeah, positives versus negatives. So right away, C and D would be out. Now we're between negatively charged in the ground and positively charged in the cloud. Here's something to remember. The negative particles move down the cloud. The positives go in the ground. It's not, with lightning, it can't be the other way around. Please don't ask me why, because I don't know. I just know that the cloud has to be negatively charged, the ground has to be positively charged, and then boom. Okay. And then one more for physical science. This is energy. This is another one you want to know. At what point is potential energy the highest? Okay. Potential versus kinetic energy. Potential energy is when it has the potential to swing. So it's at its highest at A. It's not moving yet. It's being held up, just like this pen right here, before I drop it, has potential energy. Once I drop it, it's kinetic energy. So the potential energy is at the highest here. As it starts to move, it's got kinetic, 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 kinetic. And this is where kinetic energy is the highest. Where potential energy is the lowest, K equals highest, P equals highest. They're inversely related. When potential energy is the highest, kinetic is at its lowest. So K equals lowest, P equals lowest. As I let it go, it's losing potential energy. It's gaining kinetic energy until it starts, E. It's got more potential energy here. But notice it's not up as high. It lost some of that potential because it went through, lost it, pendulum, right? And then till it finally just goes to nothing, right? But right before it moves into this next part, this is when kinetic energy is the highest. You might see it as like a hill. You'll have like a car up here. Oh my God, terrible car. You have a car and it's moving down and there will be this will be A, this will be B, C, and D, let's just say. And there'll be another car here and another car here and another car here. And it'll say, where is kinetic energy the highest? D. Where is potential energy the lowest? D. Where is potential energy the highest? A. Where is kinetic energy the lowest? A. Do you see how that works? All right. And that is the end of our presentation. Let me go back here and just take some questions. I can see that Jana's been answering a lot of the questions, so that's good. Thank you for the simplicity. Sure. I mean, that's the only way I can understand a lot of this stuff is to keep it simple. All right. So let me show you where to get more free resources on stuff like this. First of all, let me show you where to figure out where you need to figure out your score, like what score you need, because every state is different. So let me just pull this up and share it with you, but let me get my Google straight. We're doing Praxis scores by state. Okay, let me share this screen here. All right. This is where you find out your scores. All right. So just Google Praxis score by state. All right. And even if you're not using a Praxis, like let's say you're MTEL or FTCE or whatever, you can find your state here. So let's go ahead and just do state requirements. We're going to click this and we're going to do our state. So let's do New Jersey because we have so many people in New Jersey. They do all Praxis in New Jersey. Okay. Now notice, got to give it a second to load. And you can see here for elementary ed, you need the 5001. And then you don't need anything else. You used to need the PLT and all that. You don't need that. Middle school, you need language. If you're teaching language arts, this is the one you need. So that's where you find out the test. Let's say you are Florida. Oh, they don't have Florida. They don't have Florida here. Let's say you're Massachusetts. Florida uses all Pearson. So you have to go to the Pearson site for Florida. Let's say you're Massachusetts. Massachusetts uses Pearson, but they do use some. Every state sort of uses some. It'll give you a couple of areas here, but they give you the certification website. And then you can click that and it'll take you to where you need to go there. Okay. So some of you won't have a Praxis exam. All right. Now, let's go back to my, Praxis scores by state. Now let's go to compare qualifying score requirements. Notice that the URL here is state requirements. Let's do scores. Okay. Grab the scores. The screen will look like this. So let's go ahead and just grab, they break it up here. Where's the 5001? Let's just type it. All right, here we go. And then we're going to hit compare. We're going to see the whole state. Notice the whole test, we can't see a score because they're all different. All right, so let's X out of that and let's go 5002. And let's go 5002. And let's compare. Notice, here we go. Alaska, you need a 157. Arkansas, you need a 141. This is an F. This is barely any correct. Connecticut, again, 157. These are low, guys. This is F territory, D territory. And then the rest are typically 157 to 150. Okay? That's what you do. Now let's see 5003. Let's close out 5002. 5003. You can actually search your state, but I'm just putting them all up. If you don't put a state in here and you hit compare, it'll give you all the states. Again, 48, 36. This is 136. That's substantially low. That's good news if you live in Arkansas. Okay. The rest are about 157, South Dakota, 146. So, and again, listen, the difference between 146 and 157, probably 5 questions more correct, 3 to 5 questions correct, depending on the complexity. All right, another thing I want to show you when it comes to scores, let's go to calculating. We're going to send this to you. I'm just going to search this for my blog. Where is it? Let's try it again. There it is. It's this guy here. So how to calculate your Praxis score. I have a Praxis score calculator here you can download. It'll show you, and I also talk about how to do it here. So you would have to do it for each section. So listen, this is not an exact science, and I say that in the blog, but we will link this blog up because some of you are asking about this. You can sort of figure it out. That's why I say just go with 75%. If you're trying to get right on the nose, like, oh, I just need a 157, It's not the best thing to do. I want you to be over that qualifying score. So we will link this blog up in the email that goes out. If you're watching this in the future, it's already in the email you received with the link to watch this, but that will help you here. Okay. Another thing I want you to see is my YouTube channel. I have tons of videos. I just did a teacher resume. A lot of you are applying for jobs or switching districts or switching whatever. This one's really good. I talk to you how to use ChatGPT to do your resume, and then I show you how to do really well in your interview. And I have online courses for that, the interview process, all of that. Classroom management, test strategy. Please watch this. This is a good playlist. Teaching reading. Those of you who are struggling with the teaching reading test, the foundations of reading, or the 5002 or 7002, this is going to help you. All of this is free, and a lot of times there are downloads in there. Then, of course, I'm on TikTok. If you like TikTok, come see me on TikTok. I love teaching on TikTok. It's so fun. I'm doing a lot of SAT stuff in there. So if you're working on your Praxis core, it will help because the Praxis core is modeled after SAT. But you can see here lots of different things. I'm talking about phonemic awareness, Bloom's taxonomy, 5581. I sort of just do all different ones here for you. And I do have playlists to try to organize it that way. Facebook, of course, we're always on Facebook. You can see, like, here we are. And we have blogs we share constantly here. Okay, let me show you where to go if you want more webinars. Number one, free webinars tab. Next weekend, I'm doing the foundations of reading. If you need the 7002 or any reading test, I don't care if you're in Texas, I don't care where you're from, this is going to be so good for you. So many people have to take a reading test, and that is my jam. I know so much about this. So come see me then, just register. You'll get everything like you did with this. The week after that, I'm doing the early childhood, both the 5024 and the 5025. Come to that if you are teaching early childhood. I also have the teacher resume interview process here. This was the one I did last week. Tons of people attended. Lots of good stuff there. Special ed, PLT. Some of you were asking about the Praxis core. I've got ESOL 7001. I've got pretty much everything. How to lesson plan. I'm going to be doing more of that. And I even have some online courses for that. Now, when it comes to online courses, I have this course here called Teach a Survival Course for New Educators. I also have a book that goes with that is best-selling on Amazon. This book has helped a lot of people, and the course will help you as well. I talk a little bit about ChatGPT in here. I'm actually going to do a full-fledged course on ChatGPT for teachers because you guys should be using that and making your lives easier, and I'm going to teach you how to. Also on the online courses, I have a teacher interview course here. Lots of people use this course and they get the job. I have interviewed so many teachers. I was an assistant principal. I know exactly what you need to say and what they're going to ask. Also school leadership. I have everything for when you want to become an assistant principal. I have test prep for that. I've got practice tests, webinars, everything you need on the website. Remember, when you buy on the website, you can use the offer code. If you hop over to Amazon, the offer code won't work on the physical. All right. What about Oklahoma? What about South Dakota, Virginia? Go ahead and just Google that and put in your state. We will send you the link in the email and you could do your state. Okay. Because for me to do every state for every subtest, we're going to be here for another half an hour. Okay. Okay. I know that this particular lesson didn't apply to the Philippines, but I'm happy to learn. Yes, of course. We have lots of Philippine teachers from the Philippines here. What about Texas? Texas uses, I think it uses a couple of Praxis exams, but go to your Texas website. There's you guys use Pearson. It's a different testing company. All right. Have you heard of the Praxis Bridge? Okay, I've been asked about this. The Praxis Bridge is just a prep course if you miss by a certain number of points. It's another way to sell you something. And it's good. I mean, ETS makes the Praxis and they built a course. So I like the company ETS. I know many of you probably don't because they make a test and you have to take it and you have to pay for it. So, but they actually make a really good test. They give you a really good study companion. Again, let me share screen for that. This document here, Pearson does not have a document like this. Other testing companies do not provide their, why is it doing this? I already have the top. This study companion is like top notch. Other testing companies do not provide it with this much. I study lots of different tests. And of course, these content categories here and all of this, is is fair game on the exam. They tell you exactly what's on the exam. This is very transparent. I would download this and study it. And so, the Praxis Bridge is just another prep course done by Praxis. So, if you want to do it by ETS, then that's something you can do. It's new though. I haven't really dug into it. Okay. Have you taken the science? I've taken the science twice. What do you suggest to pass it on my third attempt? I suggest, again, if you're having trouble, all right, let's break this down. So you're having trouble with science. Let's find science. Okay, hang on. Find science. Science. Okay. If you're having trouble with science, I would dig in. First of all, I would get my book. I don't know if you have it or not. And I would read every section in science. I would actually read the science. I would read everything in the book. I don't recommend not reading the book. Even if you get the online course, I would read the study guide that comes with it. So go in here and then scroll down. Notice we have earth science. Here's everything you need to know for it. Here's everything you need to know. This is straight from the testing company. This is all fair game. Don't just do practice test questions. Look at this. I have these all in the book. Each one is its own heading, and I cover every single thing in my book. Other books do as well. I mean, they don't do as good of a job, I will say, because I've seen their books. We cover everything. But also, these discussion questions are really good because it makes you think about each and everything, and there are a ton of them. Look at these. They're open-ended questions, too. They're not just multiple choice, and that will help you because they require you to think critically. Here we go with life science. Here's everything for life science. Then, the guiding questions. Go through this document. It's going to help you. And of course, read the book. If you're taking practice tests over and over again, and I'm not saying you are, I don't know what your situation is. I just know that a lot of people who have trouble passing, it's because they just keep buying test prep books and they just keep doing practice tests, hoping that they will receive the same test that they got in the practice test book. And it doesn't work that way. It looks like the Praxis test is similar to the ABCTE test. Yes. I believe the ABCTE has a written section though. Okay. You'll have to look at Google ABCTE test specifications, and you should get a document like the one or a web page. Sometimes it's a web page and it'll show you that. I'm having trouble with subjects with art, music, and health questions. What do you recommend? I have a section for that. If you purchase our book, we'll send it to you. This particular one does not, but I would look up the specs and dig in like I just did for that science and figure out what exact topics are they going for, and Google, if you don't want to buy a whole new study guide, Google each section. All right. Okay. Oh, you've studied the book and know it front to back. Okay, Emily. Yes. So then what I would do is I would definitely go into that document and go to those guiding questions, because what might be happening, and this happens a lot too, the science when it's given to you a certain way, but when it's asked maybe in a different way, you're not seeing the connection. So perhaps if you go in and you look at those guiding questions and you can answer them kind of open-ended, that might help you. Also, Google some of the concepts, because they might show you, and go to images, and maybe an image is going to help you better. You know what I mean? It might be I might have explained it just in a paragraph when really you could benefit from an actual thing. Also, go to your score report and look to see where you are low. The score report is emailed to you, and focus on those and make sure you dig into those. I am just now starting to take both science and social studies next week. I took all 4 to start and did not pass those 2. See, Bethany, that's why I say take the whole thing at once. Good job. You passed 2. That's huge. Is it possible to study hard and pass those? Of course. If I read through the book and then take the practice test question, will that be effective? Yes, absolutely. Really dig in though to the concepts so you understand them, because I don't know which questions you'll get. Like we did one on the Louisiana Purchase. It might be reversed. It might be that it's about Lois and Clark and the answer choice is Louisiana Purchase. Make sure when you're studying the questions that when you're obviously reading the question in your practice guide, but then the answer explanations, which I have very detailed answer explanations, understand why the other ones are not correct. That's very powerful. I'm actually beefing up my books to have more of that. But like Also, if you have certain things in the answer choices, like for science, let's say there are other topics like kinetic energy, potential energy, whatever, static, yada, yada, look those up too. Don't just grab the right answer and move on. Like I think Emily is having a hard time with science. Look up the words in the answer choices that aren't the correct answer so you know what those are. Because sometimes those will be the questions. Does that make sense when you're on test day? I got some questions that I didn't read in the 5001. I'm not sure what that means, Taisha, but you will not get the same questions from your study guide on test day. There's no way to know what you're going to get on test day. They have thousands of questions in the item banks for these huge testing companies. There's no way to know. So you're going to have to figure out the concepts rather than the memorizing practice test questions. Rob, can I take each one separately? Yes, Rob, you can. But look at Bethany's comment. She took the whole thing and she got 2. And now she only has to focus on science and social studies. If you break it up right from the start, you sort of add more work for yourself. I say study a bit, do the best you can, go in and take it, and then maybe you get 1, maybe you get 2, maybe you get 3, maybe you get them all. Then you never have to take it again. I recommend taking the whole thing at once first and then break it up. Are there free practice tests? Yes, just Google free 5001 practice test. There's a free practice test in the test specification document that I showed you. Let me show you real quick. Here. So towards the end, if we scroll down, you can see there are free practice test questions here. I also have a free practice test on my website. So you can do that. And I'm sure there's some other ones. You could probably check Quizlet. The only problem is, you don't know what test questions you're going to get. So make sure you're studying more than that. Awesome, Rob. Thank you. I'm going to go back and look at the sections I missed. Didn't realize I could do that. Yeah, absolutely. Look at your score report. I have a video on YouTube that talks about looking at your score report. We'll link that up as well. I'm so glad I took them all together. It was a long process, but I got a fee waiver to take all 4 to start. Oh yeah, they have a teacher shortage. So some of you are probably getting fee waivers. We had them when I was starting out too, because they couldn't get any teachers in the classroom. So, but that's a webinar for another day. Oh, good luck, Bethany. Yes, Lucinda, way to go. All right, so that's it. This is a long one today. You guys, it's Saturday. Go do something fun. You did enough today. Relax. Get to your studies. Oh, one more thing. Incremental periods over long periods of time is much better than cramming on a weekend. If you can carve out 20 or 30 minutes a day, like my brain is really good early in the morning. I do most of my writing, most of my studying in the morning when my family is asleep. Do that. 20 to 30 minutes a day is so much better than going, okay, I have to study for 8 hours today. When you're in the test all the time, like 20 minutes a day, Monday, 20 minutes Tuesday, 20 minutes Wednesday, maybe you do a couple problems, maybe on Saturday you do a long practice test and that takes you a little bit longer, but every day you're digesting it. Your head is in the exam. You're going to be so much better. Like I've been working in SAT and I've been doing a lot of it, but I've been doing like 20, 30 minutes of math in SAT. And even though it was really hard, now I'm like, boom, I can recognize things because it's like running. The more you run, the better you get. If you just get off your couch right now and go run a marathon, you're going to hurt yourself. You're not going to make it. But if you do 5 miles today, maybe 3 miles tomorrow, maybe 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, you start building up that endurance. The same thing goes with testing. Okay. The answer to the question is the question itself. Understanding comprehension is key. Yes, Mary Lou, there are so many cues in the question. Read that question stem. Like I said, go back in, reread the question stem, work backwards, think like a test maker. And what Mary Lou is saying is true. If it's on the nose, don't think it's not the question. Don't say, oh, that's too obvious. If it's obvious, it's the answer. All right. Okay, everyone. So listen, I'm going to let you go. It's been about an hour and a half, a little longer than that. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. Don't forget, I have reading next week. I have early childhood the week after that. And I've got a bunch of stuff on my YouTube, TikTok, all of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for being a teacher. I know it's not easy out there. And I just appreciate you so, so much. Okay. Praxis Bridge or retake the test, Jackson, that's up to you. I don't know. I mean, they're both expensive. I don't know. See what you want to do. Okay, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you next weekend. Bye.